Do you know that feeling when everything finally falls into place? That's how I felt, standing in my brand new apartment after 6 long years of hard work. I could finally say that I have my own house. My name is Wanda, I'm 29, and this is my story. I remember the day I was promoted 2 years ago, as if it were yesterday. My boss called me into his office, and the first thought that pierced my mind was, I have a problem. Possible reasons flashed through my mind: reports, delays, some missed details. But instead of cold disappointment or harsh criticism, he handed me a contract with a new, significantly higher salary. This moment was a turning point. From that day on, I lived like a monk: no expensive clothes, no dinners in expensive restaurants, no rash purchases. Every dollar went straight to my savings account. But I'll be honest, it wasn't just my efforts that made my dream possible. My grandmother, my mother's mother, died a year ago. She left me a legacy of $150,000. This money, combined with all my savings, allowed me to finally stop just dreaming and start looking for a place to live. When I found this two-room apartment, I immediately realized, this is the one. Not too big, not too small, just perfect. And the best part is no mortgage. When I told the realtor that I wanted to pay the entire amount at once, she looked at me with slight disbelief, and then, after double-checking the documents, raised her eyebrows in surprise. The look on her face when I signed the papers was priceless. As soon as I got the keys, I couldn't help but take about 1 million photos and post them on social media. My friends went crazy with likes and comments. Congratulations, Wanda. Live the dream, they wrote. When is the housewarming party? Others asked. It was amazing to see so many people genuinely happy for me. I felt happy. And then the phone rang. The name on the screen made me cringe inside. Dad. Wanda, he said, his voice as dry as sandpaper. I need you to come to lunch next Saturday. That call brought back everything I'd been trying to forget. You see, my mom died when I was 9. Cancer destroyed our family, but Dad, he didn't stay alone for long. Within a year, he married Elda, and a year later they had my stepsister. Elda never loved me, even before she had her own daughter. But after that, it got even worse. Suddenly, there were a lot of new rules in the house. Wanda, you need to be quieter. Wanda, you can't invite your friends. Turn off the music right now. In a strange way, all these restrictions applied only to me. Meanwhile, my stepsister was getting everything she wanted. They bought her the newest toys before she even had time to ask. Family trips were planned exclusively according to her schedule. And I became a ghost in my own house. As if I didn't exist. Sometimes I wondered if my father even remembered me. But thank God for Grandma Teresa. I don't think I would have survived those years without her. As things got worse at home, I ran to her more and more often. She lived only 15 minutes away by bike, and her door was always open for me. Her house became my refuge. There I didn't have to weigh every word or be a shadow. I could be myself there. My cousins Michelle, Zeta, and little Alvise also often visited my grandmother. They were my Aunt Sarah's children, and unlike my stepsister, they treated me like a real family member. We spent hours playing board games, watching movies, or just lying around in the backyard, discussing everything. Grandma had an old wooden porch that always had a couple of wicker chairs on it. We sat there drinking lemonade and dreaming about the future. When I grow up, Zeta said, thoughtfully twirling a lock of her brown hair in her fingers, I will live in a big city, in a huge apartment. Me too. I would cheerfully join in. Only without a mortgage. We laughed, because it seemed incredible at the time. But now, standing in my own apartment, I realized that I had done it. I have fulfilled my dream. Meanwhile, things were getting worse at my father's house. My stepsister Rita has turned into a real nightmare. She hid my things, my favorite hairpin, a notebook with notes, sometimes even shoes, which made me late for school. She accidentally spilled drinks on my homework, forcing me to do it all over again, and sometimes even secretly changed the answers so that I would get a bad grade. But the worst part was that she started spreading rumors about me at school. At first, it was innocent gossip, like I was cheating on tests or dating some guy. Then the rumors got angrier and angrier. Rita said that I was stealing money from my parents, that I couldn't be trusted. Of course, when the truth was revealed, no one paid attention. But every time I tried to complain, everything turned against me. "Wanda, why are you upsetting your sister?" Sharon asked disapprovingly, folding her arms over her chest. Dad nodded silently, not even bothering to listen to my side. The day I received the college acceptance letter, I probably felt the most happiness. Not because I got in, although a partial scholarship was indeed a great achievement, but because it meant one thing: I could finally leave. The college was 3 states away, and Grandma helped me pay for what the scholarship didn't cover. I remember putting things in a suitcase, each time fearing that someone was about to step in and say that it was a mistake, that they wouldn't let me go. But that didn't happen. College turned out to be like a breath of fresh air after many years underwater. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I studied from morning to evening, completely immersed in books and lectures. I called my grandmother twice a week, sharing my successes. But my father, he rarely called. He didn't care about me. His real daughter demanded attention. When he did dial my number, our conversations were short and strained, like polite phone calls. After graduation, I had to return to my home state. I had a job offer that was too good to pass up. I assumed that I would be able to stay with my father and Elda until I found a place to live. It seemed logical. But Elda quickly stopped it. "Oh, we gave your room to Rita," she said with fake sympathy when I called. "She needs extra space for her stuff, you know that, right?" Dad didn't say a word in my defense. Not a single word. Fortunately, my grandmother welcomed me with open arms. She didn't ask any questions, just opened the door for me and cooked dinner. I lived with her until I got a job, and after a few months I had enough money to rent my first small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And then, a year ago, my grandmother died. Sudden stroke in a dream. She didn't suffer, and that was the only consolation. She left her house to my cousins, which made sense. They lived closer and always helped her maintain it. And she left me $150,000, which she had been saving all her life. The will said, "For my granddaughter, who reminds me so much of her mother." Last year passed in silence. My father and his ideal family weren't particularly worried about me. They didn't even invite me to Christmas. Not that I'm surprised. I spent the holiday with Aunt Sarah and my cousins, and to be honest, it was the best holiday in many years. And then the dinner invitation came. That Saturday, I went to my father's house with a heaviness in my chest. The closer I got to their neighborhood, the more tense my stomach became. I looked at my watch. 11:57. I arrived a little earlier. It's better than giving Elda a reason to complain. I rang the doorbell, counting the seconds until someone answered. The door swung open, and my father stood in front of me. His face was as unreadable as ever. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. No greeting, no smile. Just a cold, "Come in." They were already waiting for me in the living room. Elda settled into her favorite armchair, like a queen on a throne, and Rita sprawled on the couch, buried in her phone. Elda barely noticed my presence, a short nod, as if I were not a native person, but some kind of stranger. Rita didn't even look up. "Sit down," his father said, pointing to a lone chair across from them. I felt like I was being interrogated. The silence in the room was so thick that it could have been cut with a knife. My father cleared his throat. Rita graduated from high school, he finally said, as if this was the most important event in the world. She went to a local college. I nodded. It was an unexpected turn. I didn't know where he was going. Should I congratulate her? Send a gift? I wasn't even invited to her graduation, I finally said. Neither her father nor Elda bothered to answer. But Rita suddenly raised her head. And her look, full of self-satisfaction, made me tense up. That's nice, I said carefully, when it became clear that they were waiting for some kind of answer. She needs to live somewhere, my father continued, his gaze fixed somewhere above my head, as if he was talking not to me, but to an invisible interlocutor in space. Somewhere near the campus. There was a tense pause in the room. Elda nodded, looking like one of those toy figures that swing on the dashboard of a car. And, well, my father shifted in his chair, steepling his fingers. Your apartment would be perfect. It's in a great location, close to the college. I blinked at him incredulously. I'm not looking for a roommate, I said slowly, still trying to process what was going on. My father shook his head, finally deigning to look at me. You don't understand, Wanda. We're not asking you to let Rita live with you. We're asking you to give her your apartment. I laughed. Abruptly, briefly. The sound echoed off the walls, and I immediately realized they weren't joking. Their faces were serious. Give her my apartment? I repeated, not believing my ears. I must have misheard. They can't seriously suggest such a thing. Do you want me to give up my house? The one I just bought? Which I've been dreaming of buying for years. Yes, his father said firmly, his voice carrying the same intonation with which adults explain obvious things to children. Rita needs it more than you do. I sat in a daze, looking at them, trying to figure out if I was in some kind of absurd parallel world. My apartment. I spoke slowly, enunciating each word as if testing its taste. The one I've been saving every penny for. The one I bought with the money my grandmother left me. She deserves it more than you do, Elda interjected, her voice dripping with the same smug condescension she'd been dripping since I was 9. After all, what have you done to deserve such a wonderful place? You live all alone in a 2-room apartment, while my poor Rita has to think about a student dormitory. I jumped up so abruptly that my chair almost tipped over. Are you all completely crazy? My voice sounded louder than I expected. I will not give up my apartment. Not now, not ever. I bought it with my own money. His father's face darkened. Your own money? His voice was laced with disappointment. Your own money? Wanda, your grandmother gave you $150,000. It's hardly your own money. Something inside me snapped. All these years, I've been silent, swallowed their insults, and tried to be better than this. But it was all gone in an instant. My grandmother, I hissed, and there wasn't a drop of respect left in my voice. You mean my mother's mother? The woman who really cared about me while you were too busy playing happy family with your new wife and daughter? That grandmother who has absolutely nothing to do with Rita. At that moment, Rita finally looked up from her phone. Her lips twitched, and I saw a familiar expression. She was preparing for crocodile tears. You're a terrible sister. Stop it, she wailed, her voice trembling with feigned indignation. You're always so rude to me. You've never loved me. Wanda, her father's voice sounded low and menacing. I am very disappointed in you. That's not how we raised you. I laughed, but there wasn't an ounce of fun in that laugh. Did you bring me up? I raised my eyebrows, my tone becoming icy. You switched off at the moment when Mom died, and as soon as Elda appeared. My father clenched his jaw. Don't you dare. Don't you dare tell me how I was raised. I snapped. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, feeling like I was shaking all over with rage. Rita's theatrical sobs and Elda's comforting whisper could be heard behind her. Wanda. My father called my name. But I didn't stop. The next morning, my phone rang again. Wanda, listen to me, my father began as soon as I put the phone to my ear. You're the older sister. You have to help Rita, that's what a family does. I almost laughed. Family? Now he wants to talk about family? Where was this family spirit when Elda kicked me out of my room? I asked, icily. Where was he when Rita was making my life hell? Where was he when you didn't even invite me to Christmas? This is different, he insisted. No, Dad. It's not different. It's the same story, but you suddenly decided that I should be part of the family again, but only on your terms. You're being unreasonable, Wanda. You're crazy, I interrupted him. You're really crazy if you think I'm going to give up my apartment to a man who's been trying to hurt me all his life. Don't call me about this anymore. I hung up the phone. But it didn't end. After a few minutes, my phone started vibrating with new messages. Elda, you've always been jealous of Rita. You're just as selfish and ungrateful as your mother. After all we've done for you. I stared at the screen, feeling a strange sense of calmness wash over me. It didn't bother me the way it used to. Everything was too predictable. Dad kept calling all day, but I stopped answering. What's the point? The conversation would go in circles. He demanded that I give up my house. I refused. The guilt they were trying to put on me wasn't working anymore. A week has passed. I decided to have a housewarming party. My apartment was filled with people who really mattered to me. Friends from work, old college buddies, my cousins. The whole evening was filled with sincere laughter and lively conversations. It was almost cleansing, washing away all the toxicity of last weekend. Wanda. Zeta shouted from the kitchen. We're running out of ice. I was heading to the freezer when a quiet voice stopped me. Hey. Michelle grabbed my hand, his face unusually serious. He was usually the family clown, the soul of the company. But right now, his gaze was anxious. I need to show you something. What happened? You might want to sit down. I slowly sat down on the edge of the poof while he took out his phone. He hesitated for only a second, and then handed it to me. I was at Lorenzo's last night with some friends, he explained. Look who I saw in the background. The first photo made my heart stop. There was Elda, sitting in a dimly lit restaurant. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before was sitting next to her. They were kissing. It wasn't just a friendly kiss, but the kind of kiss that leaves no doubt about the nature of a relationship. I started scrolling further. In the next photo, Elda was laughing, her hand resting on the man's chest. On the other, he was feeding her a piece of dessert, their fingers intertwined on the table. They felt comfortable together, intimate, like people who have done this 1,000 times already. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I know I shouldn't have taken the photos, but send them to me. My voice was hoarse, barely audible. When the party was over and the last guest had left, I sat in the dark of my living room, looking at the photos. I flipped through his photos, starting from the previous years. There were corporate picnics, office parties, and holiday celebrations. She's on many of them. Sometimes just in the background, sometimes partially out of frame, but I recognized her. 20 years of photographs showing relationships that clearly went far beyond professional politeness. One photo taken 15 years ago made me hold my breath. A woman in a red dress, her face turned away from the camera, is sitting on a park bench with Gaston. Photo caption: a perfect Sunday afternoon. A woman's hair. Her posture. Her favorite red dress, which was still hanging in her closet. It was Elda. 3 years after her marriage to my father. I felt something dark and acrid boiling up inside me. I opened another tab and started searching for more recent photos of Gaston Mitchell. As soon as his face filled the screen, something else hit me, like a physical blow to the chest. Those eyes. That nose. The way his mouth curved slightly at the corners, even when he wasn't actually smiling. I opened a recent photo of Rita on my phone and held it up to the screen. The resemblance was undeniable. How could I not have seen this before? Rita was nothing like my father. She was almost an exact replica of Gaston Mitchell. The truth was burning my pocket. I walked for 2 days with this knowledge, with this weight that pulled me down every time I looked at the photos. 20 years of deception. And my father was completely blind to it. When his number popped up on my phone screen again, I barely answered. But something made me pick up the phone. Wanda, his voice was stern, authoritative. The voice of a man who believes he has power. We need to have a serious conversation. Come home. I thought about telling him everything right now. Just tell the truth. Rip off the band-aid. A 20-year romance. Illegitimate daughter. The lie he had been living for so many years. But something inside me said, wait. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said instead. When I arrived, they were already waiting in the living room. Just Dad and Elda. Sit down, Wanda, her father commanded. I obeyed. Pretending to be an obedient daughter for the last time. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your behavior disappoints me, he began, pacing in front of the fireplace. This selfishness. This refusal to help his sister. This has all gone too far, and now it's going to stop. I looked at Elda. She nodded. My stomach clenched at the insolence of this woman. She demanded that I give my apartment to her illegitimate daughter. I've made a decision. Dad continued to speak in a harsh voice. Either you give the apartment to Rita, or I completely cut you out of my will. No inheritance. No family money. Nothing. Elda's face lit up with triumph. They really thought they had me cornered. I forced my face to express shock and bitterness. I need to think about it, I whispered. I watched Elda's smile grow wider. Good girl, her father said, his voice softening slightly. You need time to think about what's really important. I could use that time. Can I use the bathroom? I asked in a low, uncertain voice. My father waved his hand dismissively. I hurried upstairs. But instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into Rita's room. To my old room. Everything was pink and perfect, just like her whole life. There was her hairbrush on the dressing table. I slowly approached her. Long dark hair on the teeth. Exact replicas of Gaston Mitchell's hair. My hands were shaking slightly. I pulled a small plastic bag out of my pocket and carefully gathered a few strands. Then I crept into my father's bedroom. His comb was where it always was, on the dresser, next to the wedding photo. The irony did not escape me. I carefully picked up a few hairs and sealed them in another plastic bag. That evening, I started looking for labs that perform DNA tests. I needed those who do paternity tests. Those whose results will stand up to scrutiny in court. It wasn't cheap. Almost $2,000 for urgent processing. But it was worth every penny. The next morning, I entered the lab, holding 2 carefully labeled packages in my hands. The specialist explained the process to me, made me fill out the documents, and assured me that the results would be ready in a few weeks. I thanked her and left. The wait was excruciating. The DNA test results came in a plain white envelope. My hands were shaking when I opened it, although I already knew what it would say. The clinical language was ruthless. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. Probability of paternity, 0%. Even if I wanted to doubt, I couldn't. Rita was not my father's daughter. Just at that moment, the phone rang. Name on the screen, Elda. I pressed receive, holding the phone to my ear. We're tired of waiting, she barked, not bothering to greet him. Your father and I want your final decision on the apartment. Within a few days. Or you can forget about the inheritance. I kept my voice steady and calm. Actually, I've been thinking about everything. And? I'm coming to dinner this Saturday. We can discuss it then. She grunted with satisfaction and hung up the phone. I looked at the envelope with the DNA results. It was safely in my purse. But now it was a bomb. On Saturday evening, I went back to my father's house. But this time I had no fear. This time there was excitement. They were waiting for me in the living room. All three of them. Like cats chasing a mouse. Elda was literally beaming. Rita was sprawled out on the couch, lazily examining her manicure, her smug grin turning me inside out. My father stood by the fireplace, trying to look stern, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. Finally, Rita drawled, rolling her eyes. It took you a long time to make the right decision. Dad stepped forward and put his hand on my shoulder. I'm glad you've changed your mind, Wanda. His voice was softer, even warmer. This is the essence of a family, to help each other. I shrugged my shoulders. I haven't changed my mind. Silence. I will not give up my apartment. Not now, not ever. Selfish brat. Dad's face flushed red. That's it. Stop it, he snapped, jerking his hand away. You're excluded from the will. Rita gets everything. My real daughter. Someone who really understands family loyalty. I couldn't help myself. I laughed. Loudly. Long. With a challenge. The sound echoed through the room. They stared at me like I was crazy. Your real daughter, huh? I reached into my purse. That's interesting, Dad. Because I have something you need to see. I took out a white envelope and handed it to him. My father snatched it out. The look is suspicious, intense. He tore open the envelope, pulling out the papers. Read it. I spoke softly. But clearly. Read it aloud. He began to read. At first, his voice was firm and confident. DNA kinship test report. But then his face started to change. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands trembled when he reached the crucial line. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. Probability of paternity, 0%. Elda made a strange sound. It was like she'd been punched in the stomach. That's a lie. Stop it, she screamed, jumping up from her chair. Her face was contorted with panic. She forged these documents. She's trying to turn you against me. Against us. I calmly took out my phone. I have more evidence. I tapped on the screen. I opened the folder with the photos. She turned the screen to her father. There was a dead silence in the room. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled out the photos Michelle had taken. Look, I said, turning the phone screen to my father. There was a deathly silence in the room. Elda was on the screen. Locked in an intimate embrace with Gaston Mitchell. The timestamp clearly showed that it was last week. Elda collapsed onto the couch. Her mask of superiority finally cracked. David, please. Her voice trembled like an autumn leaf. Can I explain? Explain? My father exploded. The roar of his voice made me jump. Explain what? How long has this been going on? 20 years old. Those two words fell into the silence like a stone into water. Elda whispered them through the tears that were streaming down her face. He's my colleague at Riverside Insurance. She swallowed hard. Rita. Her voice broke. I felt something inside me turn over. That's it. Rita is his daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my father's world crumble in real time. 20 years of lying had hit him like an avalanche. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and walked out. Let them deal with the payment. The next week passed in a blur. I went to work. I was returning home. I tried to make sense of everything that had happened. I've heard the gossip. Elda and Rita moved out. Dad hired one of the best divorce lawyers in town. The scandal spread through their social circle with the speed of a forest fire. When his number appeared on my phone screen a week later, I almost ignored the call. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, made me answer. Can we meet? His voice was rough, tired. Coffee at the Carson Cafe. I found him at a corner table. He stared into his cold cup of coffee. He looked like he had aged 10 years. Not shaved. Hunched shoulders. There was no wedding ring. I filed for divorce. He said it without preamble. I silently put my latte on the table. Elda and Rita are gone, he continued. I told them to get out of my house. His lips twitched. I also stopped paying for Rita's college. Why should I pay for someone else's child? I was silent. She was stirring her latte. I was expecting it. Wanda, his voice cracked. I've been a terrible father to you. Yes, I said quietly. You were like that. All these years, he ran his hand over his face, as if trying to erase the burden of his mistakes. I preferred Rita over you. I let Elda treat you like a stranger in your own home. I wasn't protecting you. I didn't support it. I failed you in every way possible. I nodded. You did it. But if it wasn't for Rita... My voice was calm, but there was an inevitable realization in it. If you hadn't found out the truth about her, you would never have realized it. The father did not immediately respond. If she were your biological daughter, you would continue to treat me like a second-class citizen. You would have taken my apartment away from me and given it to her. Without hesitation. He flinched, but didn't deny it. Please. His hand reached across the table. Please give me a chance to fix this. Let me try to be the father you deserved from the very beginning. That was 3 months ago. Now we meet sometimes. Coffee. Dinners. Careful conversations about safe topics. He's trying to catch up. He tells me stories about his mom that he's never told me before. He asks about my work. My friends. My life. But full forgiveness? I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will. 20 years of rejection and neglect have left scars that won't heal overnight. If they ever heal. As for Elda and Rita, I sometimes hear some gossip. They moved in with Gaston Mitchell. They're probably living the life they've been secretly planning all along. But honestly, I don't care. This is a chapter in my life that is now closed.